Go, NTDO 212, com check.
DPS, go. Inco, go. PUS, go. Surgeon, go. Booster, go. Copy that. We have a go from you guys.
This is Talking Sound.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the Talking Sound podcast, coming to you from Austin, Texas. I am Chris Jordan, your host. This last week, we actually had the great pleasure, as we do every year, of being guests of the Texas Association of Broadcasters, going out, talking to quite a few of their vendors, people who sell equipment to us in the industry, whether it be the live AV industry, broadcast, what have you. And some of the people that I was very excited to talk to when we were there was Blackmagic Designs. I myself am a huge fan of their products. I use them almost exclusively for video. I recommend them to people regularly on the show site. And when I was there, I was not able to speak to anybody, but they actually got in touch with their people and were like, hey, this guy came and he would love to talk about some of our products. So we actually have Bob Caniglia. Is that correct?
Bob Caniglia, yes.
Caniglia, all right.
G is silent.
Yes, okay. Welcome to the show. He is actually the Director of Sales Operations for Blackmagic Design, and I'm so happy to have him on today to talk about some of the new exciting products that they have just released to market, especially stuff like their new 6K camera, their new 8K Constellation, HyperDeck Extreme 8K. Everything has gone to these crazy, wild video formats where you can record almost uncompressed, incredible footage so that you can do almost anything with it. Tell us a little bit about how this, number one, about how you came to be involved with Blackmagic, Bob. I always love hearing people's stories about how they came into the industry and how it was that you came to be involved with this incredible company.
Yeah, sure. Blackmagic acquired a company called DaVinci, which makes DaVinci Resolve. At the time, it was color grading software only, really. Today, obviously, it does editing and visual effects and Fairlight audio and color grading and all that. But I worked for DaVinci, and they acquired us in September of 2009, so it's almost 10 years. And as I like to say, I was the youngest guy at DaVinci, but became the oldest guy at Blackmagic overnight. So it was an interesting change because, you know, we went from selling systems that were in the $300,000 to $500,000 turnkey to basically what today is some free software or for $295, or it comes with one of the new cameras. But, you know, we make it up in volume somehow.
Well, and, you know, like I was saying before the show, one of the main reasons I loved Blackmagic and still love Blackmagic is straight up bang for the buck, folks. I come from a broadcast background, did quite a bit of audio, video broadcasts, things like that. And even in the audio studios I worked in, I saw Blackmagic equipment. But it really came down to, like we were saying beforehand, it was price point. At the time that Blackmagic and DaVinci joined, like we were saying before the show, it was very much the age of the TriCaster being birthed. Things like that were just coming out to the market where, it was like a $20,000 in the box solution. And
I mean, when we rolled out our switchers, you know, we had bought a company called Ecolab, and we basically took their design of their panels, and then we made our own versions of them. But then we made our own hardware in the set, you know, and came out with a couple of different versions. We had the A10 TV Studio, and then 1ME and a 2ME version of the switchers, and they could be run with just software. And the lowest price one, which was it was 8 inputs total, 4 HDMI, 4 SDI. And you're talking for $995, you had a production switcher.
Yeah.
And that was a groundbreaking. And it led to a lot of people getting into live switching that had only dreamed about it because of price point.
Exactly. Yeah, it completely changed the field. It changed the way that manufacturers were thinking about things in this world. And I really think especially that you guys were a huge pivot point in the industry eye turning towards smaller production because it's so frequently the high-end video market, even the video mixing market was really put into the world of broadcast money. Like we were saying, unless you had like $250,000 for a Grass Valley, things like that were crazy expensive. There was no way that a typical school could have anything outside of a data video switcher, and even that was prohibitively expensive in the $3,000 to $4,000 range. When you guys started producing this stuff that was software driven, it was absolutely market changing.
Well, I went to college in the '80s, and we had put in to get a new production switcher for my senior year, and it was only going to be some little 1ME. It didn't even have a DV in it. It was just but it was a switcher that we got approved, and it was going to be about $60,000.
Yeah.
And the 995 switcher that we had today has a channel of DVE and all these other things, and it just kind of, you laugh, but what it had. But when I came back, I said, "Well, where's the new switcher?" And they said, "Oh, did you see they're adding a pool to the gymnasium, and that's where your switcher went?" And I went, "Oh,
Go,
how about that?
Go take some laps, cool off."
Yeah, exactly. Now that pool is still there at that school, almost 40 years later. But that switcher wouldn't have done anything but hold open that door at this point if we had bought it.
Yeah.
But then the funny thing is that university now has a complete Blackmagic setup. They have, switchers and cameras and all these other things for probably less than the $60,000 we needed in 1985 or 6 or whatever it was. So, yeah. That's a game changer.
I mean, I know. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's right. I was going to say, we have a van that we use to drive around the country with some products in it to show people what we do. And a couple of years ago, it was on the East Coast, and somebody called in and left a message and said, "I'm from this small high school in New Jersey, and I wanted to see if I could go somewhere to get a demo." And it just so happens that we were so close to him because we were on our way to Connecticut to go do something else. And So I called the guy and I said, "Look, to be honest with you, I can stop by tomorrow. I have this van, has everything in it. We'll just pull in, we'll show it to you. It'll be great." And he was blown away. So we go in, we show it to him, and he just wrote down everything he needed. And he went into the principal, who was a nun, and said, "This is what I want." And he got it. And they have the whole studio in that school. Then the very next day, we took the van up to see some guys at one of the major networks, the letter networks. And because they wanted to see two switchers at the same time that could communicate via IP and how we could control them, whatever. So they came on the van and we showed them, and they bought a bunch of them. But the ironic part of the whole thing is that the call letter station bought the smaller switcher, but the high school bought the bigger one.
Well, and what's amazing, though, is that you were describing what 20 years ago, Bob, would have been literally two totally different serviceable markets. Those would have been two totally different companies building two totally different products for two totally different customers. And the fact that y'all brought these together, the fact that I can now, whenever somebody's like, "Hey, I want to build a video podcast studio," and I can give them broadcast quality video switching cameras and live effects, like live green screen keying, stuff like that, for less than a $3,000-$4,000 budget, is mind-numbing. It's mind-numbing. That's the only way to put it. But
that's the goal of the company. The company is, Grant Petty, who's the CEO. His vision was that nobody should be hampered by a lack of funds to do their vision. And so his goal is to make these things as affordable as possible. Time after time, I run into people who are so amazed at what we're able to do at the price points that we're doing. And they thank us. And, when I used to work for other companies in the manufacturing side that sold things for $1 million, no one ever said, "Hey, thanks for selling us something for $1 million." No one ever said that.
Yeah. Exactly.
But I think that, yeah, and it's weird too to me that if you look at the pyramid of the business, as you say, the top end, the broadcaster guys, that's one segment that people will. And I spent most of my career working either in the business on the production and post production side or selling into that area. The rest of it, which is the larger portion of it, the schools, the churches, the corporate AV, anybody doing, and now podcasts and whatever, YouTubers, all these things. That is a massive segment that some companies couldn't go after if they wanted to unless they completely changed their paradigm.
Yeah.
Whereas we're set up to address the needs of the entire pyramid. If the top end guys decide that we make something that they can use, then that's great. But we also know that the rest of the pyramid can use it. But also, when we come out with a new version of something like the Ursa Mini Pro G2, the Generation 2, we put in features that everybody wanted. So that the high-end guys wanted it because it does slow-mo and whatnot and has ND filters versus the original Ursa Mini, and all those things. But everybody gets to use them. I mean, we're not doing anything for the high-end guys that everybody can't take advantage of, and that's awesome.
Yeah, that's what's amazing is that the cameras that y'all sell, like the Ursa Mini 2, things like that, they are still well underneath your typical E&G camera price point. Absolutely. It's phenomenal, the technology that you can get from Blackmagic for the price. And I did a lot of install work, things like that, a lot of work with churches. And recently, within the last year, had a friend of mine asking me, he'd just moved into town here in Austin and was working with the church in their media department. And he was like, hey, do you have anybody locally that can sell me a TriCaster? Do you have any vendor connections locally? And I kind of laughed with him on the phone. I was like, you're funny. And he was like, what do you mean, man? That's the best. I'm like, yeah, we haven't seen each other for a good 7 years, my friend. Let me get you a quote on something else. And I built an entire Blackmagic studio with 3 cameras, everything for the worship space for literally about the third the price of the TriCaster he was looking for. And he was like, oh my God, this is crazy. Like, we can do all of this for that price? So I was like, yeah, absolutely. The technology is there. And even with me in the corporate AV field, that's where I love it. Using devices like my HyperDeck Mini, stuff like that, where it's all SSD based. People can bring me either an SSD drive for my HyperDeck, or they can bring me a simple memory card, for my HyperDeck Mini, and that's such an affordable thing for any client to go buy off the shelf on their way into a show, and not have to be charged crazy amounts for expendables, things like that. Where you can literally go, hey man, we're running out of footage right now. Somebody hop on Amazon Prime now and get some memory cards sent over to us. There are many devices by other people in the market who have clamored for years to catch up with this because they only thought about post-production and didn't think about this corporate AV field market, the church market, the school market, where, hey, we can't afford to buy a proprietary drive for $850 a pop.
Yeah, right. We have a completely different philosophy, and the people that make a lot of money off of the Blackmagic product and all the workflow are the people that sell all the accessories. The people sell them, but it isn't. See, the other thing that we like the idea that we didn't go proprietary on things because we want people to have choices. Now we test and verify that certain brands work and whatever, but that's just to help the customers. But it's not really to push them towards anything other than a successful recording. But as you say, you should be able to buy the media anywhere, and it doesn't. When I worked in post production in Hollywood back in the 80s and 90s, we used to charge for a disc for the K-scope or the ADO or whatever, and it was, you need a formatted disc, so we'll sell you that for $25.
Yeah,
it's a $2 floppy drive.
Yeah, that's what happens. That's what happens. Because you had to pay somebody to sit there and wait for that format to say complete. So you got to pay for their hour of labor, and that's just how it works. The upcharge just keeps on going, like the train keeps moving. And there's the joke in the industry of pass the savings on to the client. And that's what it ends up being at the end of the day. Whenever you're talking proprietary drives, having to use hard drives that are specifically formatted to certain things. The fact that y'all have instant rollover from one SD card to another, all that kind of stuff, the integration and thoughtfulness that y'all have put into your products for not only user-friendly interface, but also just theory of construction, the ergonomic way that they're built, things like that. Let's start getting into a few of the new products. Speaking of that, one of my favorites that I was so excited to see and actually lay eyes on because I'd heard about it was this unicorn, the Pocket Cinema 6K. When the Pocket Cinema 4K came out to begin with, I was in love. I've still yet to lay my hands on one and play with one. I myself have one of the Studio 2.5s, and for my uses, still perfectly fine. I've gotten a chance to see many generations of the Blackmagic cameras and use them, but have not added the Pocket Cinema to my arsenal yet. Let's talk a little bit about the development of that product and some of the capabilities that it has.
Yeah, sure. So the Pocket Cinema Camera 4K, which we launched as a product in at NAB 2018, but and with a target date of shipping in September, October time, which we began to ship them then. It was a huge hit for us. We were inundated with orders / overwhelmed with them, which is nice. A good problem to have, I suppose. But, we were trying to get as many out as we could, and we have been and whatnot. The longer-term plan, which doesn't get revealed to anyone until it's time, was to use that body that we created for another version, so that the 6K version, when the 6K sensor was available, and we would put an EF mount on there. So now it's two different cameras. The original Pocket 4K was sort of the upgrade to the original Pocket camera that we had created a few years back that was very successful, but it had a Micro Four Thirds mount, and so the 4K had the Micro Four Thirds mount. The original had a mini HDMI out, which people weren't real thrilled with, so we put in the full size HDMI. So we basically did put in a mini XLR input, and a touch screen, and so we did all these improvements to. The original Pocket camera was for like skinny jeans, and this one's more for cargo pants, but it's still a Pocket camera. But you're still getting the high quality and 4K resolution, and you can shoot, HD and all the things that people like. And people, were very attracted to it. It had a great price point, and it was very successful. And then, of course, the 6K camera, which we just announced, a few days ago, was basically just another step in this product, so we could take it to a different level. Blackmagic RAW, which is our new RAW format, is really where these two cameras excel in the sense that you're able to record raw images but smaller sized files. But more importantly than that, the Blackmagic RAW allows you to basically record two files in one. What I mean by that is normally if you're shooting RAW, you shoot RAW. Then you have to make copies of it, and you give the raw copies to the guy who's doing color correction. Then you have to make proxy versions and put a LUT on it so that the guy can edit with it and doesn't see raw footage, and it becomes sort of a cumbersome workflow. Whereas with Blackmagic RAW, you basically just make a copy and send it to whomever's getting it. Everyone gets the same copy of the same media because the media is small enough and pre-processed slightly in the camera so that it plays back quickly, but it has a LUT that you can turn on or off and go back to the raw footage if needed. And to the point where there's no reconform. Once the edit is finished and the color grading is done, the colorists can essentially, depending on where they are, if they're in the same facility sharing the same media, they just hit an update and boom, the colors change. But if they are separated, they can just email the file that updates the metadata. So it's a small thing, and you just update it, and boom, the color's done. So no reconforming, no relinking.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you're able to do that, then you've got something new. So, for instance, if you want to shoot 6K and you use our Blackmagic Raw 12:1, you can get about an hour on an SD card. Now that's amazing because normally
that's incredible.
4K images make SD cards struggle, but our compression that we're using, and the reason why it's so clean and why it's so effective is we are doing processing in the camera, but we also know the sensor. It's not a generic codec at this point where you can just put it on any camera. You need to be able to implement it properly. You need to have the sensor data. Well, we have the sensor data because we're making both products. We're making Resolve that would process the images, but we also make the camera. So, when you have that, that's the holy grail. So really the Blackmagic Raw format is the unicorn because it is the best of both worlds to basically have two files in one because you have your Raw and you have your usable proxy, which is not really a proxy because, as I say, these files play back very quickly. We even have a new Blackmagic Raw speed test program that we're using so that people can do real-world testing on their CPU and GPU and find out the performance of using our Raw codec and how fast it can be with the download that you can find on our site. And so this the Blackmagic Raw, which is implemented in a few cameras, it's in the 4K, the Pocket 4K, the Pocket 6K, and also the Ursa Mini Pro. And it's because those three cameras have the processing power, the CPU power in them to be able to handle this codec that we've been developing for quite a number of years. So the reaction to that has been very strong. And then it coincides with the DaVinci Resolve release of 16.0 and a beta of 16.1 that has our new cut page. And, so now there's two different editing pages based on the type of work that you do. All editing isn't the same. I worked a lot of short form stuff, news, then I got into music videos and commercials and promos and things like that, all very relatively short format stuff. I never edited a feature film, and to be honest with you, I don't think I have the patience to work on something that long. I don't know that I could do it.
Same.
But you edit differently. You edit differently when you do that, And so why would one page just have it all, and it might get cumbersome, whatever. So we've split up tasks, and this cut page is revolutionary with some of the things that we've added to it. But we've been able to sort of make it easy for people to go through their steps of what they want to do. And in a feature, you would use the cut page just to break up shots and sort of make the assistant editor could use it in there, make it do some help, work with the bins and things like that you use in a feature. Whereas, if I'm doing a promo or a commercial or something, I don't need bins. I just throw all the footage in there and let's see what we got and cut it up. So it's a different process. So this way we've been able to segment that. And of course, we have Fusion visual effects in that program, as well as Fairlight audio now, and of course the DaVinci Resolve color page. So it's got quite a bit of power in there, and there's a free download. People can try it, on our website and get going with it. It comes, the full studio version comes in the Pocket 4K as well as the Pocket 6K camera. And the Ursa Mini Pros, those cameras have it as well. So it's a combination. And Resolve, it's funny, when I joined in 2009, if there were 100 people in the world that knew how to run a Resolve, I'd say it was a lot. Okay. And today there's millions of people. It's a mind blowing from that perspective that, because if something's $500,000 or $300,000 to $500,000, I handled all of the East Coast sales. Well, I didn't have to go to too many cities. I wasn't going everywhere because only so many places had that kind of money to be able to make that work. And today I'm glad I don't have to go to visit each customer because I would never be home, individually, given that it can be anywhere. And I run into kids that have bought the cameras and they're shooting great stuff. And, we're arming a multitude of people to get started right away. I mean, I only dreamed of doing things on shooting on film or something like that. You know, my choices were shoot on 3/4 inch tape or find money to do it on film. Well, you know, that's not much of a choice. But today, some of the things, I mean, you can shoot with these digital film cameras, as we call them, and they're going to look as good as any film you could have shot or better.
Well, and especially with the world of effects processing that we have now, the things that you guys have done with effects processing with DaVinci Resolve. I was just sitting here musing as you were talking about the birth of DaVinci Resolve, and it really reminds me a lot of the birth of Avid back in the day, except with the fact that Avid made the horrible mistake of teaming up with manufacturers to where if you wanted to use this product or this version of a studio DAW, you had to use this interface. You had to use this market brand. And I think that kind of crushed a lot of things, not only for them, but for the manufacturers as well. Whereas you guys had the forethought and the vision to say, hey, we need to join these two from the get-go. And we don't need to lose the software component. We need to build the software component up as we build the products and as these products come to bear. And now it's gotten to where I remember whenever I first started digitally editing things like that, you know, it was one of those, if you heard of somewhere that had an Avid system, like, oh man, you know, they spent money to get that. And if you heard of filmmakers that were like renting time on an Avid to go edit their movie, that kind of stuff. Blackmagic and DaVinci have become like synonymous in the film world. For me to hear or see pictures of my friends on social media editing film, editing movies, it's typically being done in Resolve now because it handles all of those things. For post-production, it handles the effects. And it's amazing what you guys have done to put that kind of forethought, like I said, not only into the products but into the software as well.
Yeah, it's it's no secret that many Resolve users of the software, free or otherwise, free or the paid studio version, have additional Blackmagic hardware. So, we participate in their purchasing plans in other areas. So, you couldn't really go to somebody that's working in Resolve and doing work professionally and walk in. It would be difficult to walk in there and have them say, well, it's the only thing I use from Blackmagic. I mean, there'd be some other things there. There would be some I/O devices that, and there would be, probably a recorder, a router, and it goes on and on and on. And now people are buying cameras, and because they're affordable, we make the products that fit, obviously, that work with all these things. And so, that software, it does help us grow the hardware business. And I think it builds some loyalty. People look at us if, they know that we're helping them build their own businesses. Some people early on were saying, wow, you're making it so cheap, whatever. I said, but look, at the end of the day, you could buy a scalpel for $5. It doesn't make you a surgeon.
Yeah.
Good talent and good stories still need to be told, and the work still has to be good at it. But what we've done is we just enabled a lot more people to get involved and be able to do it. I ran into some young guys recently at a small show that I did, and I thought they were still in college, which they may not have been too far out of it. But they, I said, hey, where are you guys from? And they said, oh, we started our own production company like a year ago, after school. And I was like, wow. So they got out of college and they decided to start their own thing. And he said, but we bought 2 of your cameras and we're using Resolve, and, and boom, we went off and started running with it. When I got out of college, if I wanted to do that, I would say, well, first, let's find $500,000 to $2 million. And then,
exactly.
That's not going to.
Exactly. Even back in the day, if you hopped in a Wayback Machine and went back to 2000, 2001 and got yourself like a Canon XL1, you were spending $5,500,
Yeah.
And that was like,
and you're not getting what you're
almost
getting today.
that was like top of the line prosumer. That wasn't even a pro camera, you know?
Right. No, that's right.
So to see what you guys are doing is amazing, especially coming from a broadcast atmosphere like I have into the corporate realm, to see people using this stuff regularly in their routing and their video processing and video mapping, stuff like that. Let's get a little bit into your Constellation 8K system if you still have some time.
Absolutely. So, it's interesting. This switcher was the original mission that we had was that we needed to build an 8K switcher because of the 2020 Olympics coming up. NHK intends to do some 8K, and we knew that we need to put some 8K products out there. And so, but in the development of the switcher, when you start to lay it out, in order to get 8K, you need 4 4K cables. So it's quad 12G to get an 8K signal in. So as you start to lay that out, the guys were saying, well, wait a minute, if we're going to have a 10 input 8K switcher, there are 40 BNCs going in the back.
Yeah.
So what if we just said, well, wait a minute, we'll make it run in HD and 4K, and then it's a 40 input switcher, not a 10 input switcher. And then everything just became a multiple of 4. So if it was 1 ME in 8K, it could be a 4 ME in 4K, a 4 ME in HD. If there's one multi-view in 8K, there's 4 multi-views in 4K. And so, there's 6
Brilliant
aux outputs in 8K, but now there's 24 outputs in Ultra HD or HD. So it became this, it was kind of hard to name it. Like I wanted to name it I was trying to figure out some kind of math thing, like, it's 8K all the way, or I don't know, something to tell everybody that it's not just an 8K switcher, even though it's in the name. But, we emphasize that it's a 40 input, switcher for doing Ultra HD and HD.
Yeah, that it metrically changes the more you bump resolution down.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And on the back of when you look at it, that's a lot of BNCs. We are the largest consumer of BNC connectors on the planet. This one, it is great. And also we were able to add some features that people were requesting in legacy switchers. Like in the multi-view, normally it was a big box for program and preview, and then 8 other little boxes for your sources and whatnot. What we've done with this one, the multi-views are dynamic so that you can put a combination, whatever combination you want. So you could have 2 big boxes and 8 little boxes, but they don't have to be program preview. They could be any of the inputs into those. And so it became, and then you could make it so that you could have, up to 16 images on there, or you could have 1 large box and then 12 other little ones. And so it was like a whole combination that you could basically rearrange these multi-views to do whatever and see whatever you want with all of the inputs in it. And that has been extremely well received because sometimes in like the 2 ME switchers, they didn't need to see ME1 or ME2 program preview. They wanted to actually see more sources. So in this case, they could do that. And, and with these larger TVs, like an 8K TV, you could feed 4 4K multi-views into an 8K TV and have those segments. So, it's really amazing what you can do. And of course, we make that box that takes the 4 SDIs and converts it to 4 HDMIs for 8K. There's a Teranex Mini for that we make. So, that ATEM is, obviously the most powerful. But the one thing that sometimes not everybody realizes that if you're running an 8K and you have, say, 4 8K inputs, and then somebody gives you a couple 4K inputs, the switcher will up-res it to 8K. So there's dynamic, handling of the inputs that no matter what the resolution is on the output, all of the inputs will be changed to match that output. So no matter what you plug in, it's going to work. And that is really clever. It's like having 40 channels of Teranex.
Yeah, you've got a cross converter built into it. doing that, because that was quite honestly one of the big complaints that I always heard from people is like, well, it's no barcode, I can't just like tell it to upscale and shoot it out. Whatever's coming in is what your destination out is. So if you were going to do a 1080i client out in the field, you had to make sure that all the cameras could send you a 1080i signal. We all good there, things like that. So to see
now
we go ahead.
I was going to say, we changed some of that philosophy when we came out with the A10 TV Studio and HD and the TV Studio Pros. Those three models had that ability to do it. But then when we took it up to a whole nother level with this monster that also had it, that's when we really, made people take a look. Because if you think about it, if you're a concert tour, and you're even if you're using 4K cameras, say out, and you're not going to have that many inputs. So you could put in, 10 inputs would be probably fine. So if you have a video wall behind the band, you'd want to, and it's capable of taking 8K. You'd want to feed it 8K because it's going to look better. So you could up-res the 4K into 8K for that, and then maybe the side screens could still be 4K or whatever, and you could. So it really gives some of the live production people some new tools to think about for the upcoming tours. I could see guys thinking, oh, wait a minute, this is a game changer if we can use video walls next year.
Yeah.
That resolution won't matter. This is going to be great because let's face it, if you're at a concert, you can tell the difference when people are using either HD or 4K or whatever. So. I think that we'll see some changes in the way people present live and artists, especially in the music business. Touring is where they're going to make money these days. So knowing that if you're sitting in the back of a large stadium, you can actually still see the screens with good resolution, that's going to play well for everybody.
Well, and not only that, just speaking of the touring aspect, myself coming from a music background going into video many years ago, it's something that I always told musicians that I worked with that did road work was, hey, if you're going to use that guitar pedal, make sure it's something that you can buy at your local Guitar Center. Make sure it's something like, it's great to have all these boutique fancy things, but if it's something that is integral to your sound and what you're doing and it breaks on the road, how are you going to replace that? If you're using crazy equipment, things like that, even in video production, it's hard to find that stuff. That's the great thing about Blackmagic. It's readily available. It's available at local vendors.
Absolutely.
It's readily available online. I mean, I've had stuff primed now to me from Blackmagic, like on site, and people are like, whoa, like, did your wife bring that from home? I'm like, nah, prime now. Got to me in 2 hours or less.
Yeah.
Just kept working on the job site and it got delivered. It's readily available. It's out there. Even the 6K cameras, stuff like that. They aren't like, you have to go to a crazy catalog or a crazy distributor to be able to find them. And the fact that even with the creation of your Constellation 8K, that you saw that, hey, people are going to need a way to break this out into other stuff. So you made the Terranex 8K. People are going to need a way to be able to capture this stuff. So you made the Hyper Extreme 8K. It's great to see that, like, y'all just start from the beginning with just handling all of it. And from then on, it's just updates and it's great.
It helps to have the vision of Grant, but also, there's enough of us at the company that worked in different aspects of the business. And, you don't know how lucky you are until you start to talk to other people like, oh, well, I never did live production. I'm like, oh, bummer for you, because it's a cool thing. And they even dragged me out to TD an award show every once in a while, and which is a little strange to me because it's sort of like asking somebody to give a piano concert that doesn't own a piano. But, the fact that we still get our hands dirty by using the gear is extremely helpful for the company, because we can either confirm some workflow issues that people have or discover ways to get around, or, that's why my product specialist team that we have, we go to do a lot of these shows, but we also try to, play with the gear in real situations so that we can, we better understand everything. We also learn from other people that are using it. Last night I was doing a user group meeting, and it was so funny because I thought I was going to be a big deal coming up with a 6K camera to it because it's only a few days later and show them. And there was one guy there who said, I already have one. I said, what? So
that's awesome.
They had to go to somebody. I know.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that is very cool. And, when I worked in post way back when, the spirit of sharing knowledge was non-existent. You could barely get a guy you worked with at a post house to tell you how something worked. Whereas today, there's all these meetings and user groups and boards and, all people will share anything and are willing to do so. I mean, I'm happy, just doing home repair that there's always some guy showing me how to change a faucet or whatever. But the fact that they do it in this business too, I think is very cool. And, it's taken me a while to kind of adjust to it because as I say, that's not how I grew up.
Yeah. And it's interesting because like, as an audio engineer first, it was very, hey, what's that wizard in the corner doing? How's he doing that? Whoa. And how do I learn to be that wizard? There is always that question of like, man, how did you get into this? And had somebody told me, Bob, that what I did in tech theater in high school is what I would be getting paid to travel the country to do on a daily basis, I would have told them that they were a liar. I was told, and it's pushing buttons. I get paid to play with people's expensive toys all day, folks. That's what I get to do. I'm like a kid in a candy store. Every show I work, it's like, woohoo, wires. All right. Wires and buttons and flashing things. And to keep that sense of wonder is hard. But like you said, to find somebody to pass that knowledge on, that's the main reason I actively started this show, was so that we could share stories like yours. How did you get into this? How did you become part of Blackmagic, of all things? Like this ground shaking behemoth of a company that has literally changed the way that things are done in an entire industry. It's great. It's great. And to hear these stories, to hear people demystifying it, it's my way of paying it forward, folks, is to show people all the time, like, hey, you can do this. Find somebody. Somebody out there will share this knowledge with you. I tell technicians I work with all the time that are like, man, you rock that Blackmagic. I wish I could learn how to do one of those. It's like, when you see that I'm off the road on Facebook, give me a shout, man. Bring a 6-pack over. I'll show you how to rock a Blackmagic. Like I'm not going to keep that knowledge from you and keep you from earning a piece of bread. I want you, like, more good technicians like you out in the field make me a better technician. That's just how that works.
I work for the I work for the manufacturer, so that's part of the job is to help people to do things. But I have some friends that I know from, years past or whatever, and they'll give me a call and be like, all right, how do I do this? And I'll say, hold on, let me wire up something. So I'll wire up the switcher over. I said, all right, so explain what you want to do again. And then we'll go through it. And I go, okay, yep. So I see what you want to do now. And here's a couple ways you could do it. You could do it this way. You could do it that way. They're like, oh, I didn't think about that. I'm like, well, I said, I get to live with the product every day. You're just trying to put out a fire somewhere. Yeah. And so that helps. And then, you pick up tips too. When I pay attention every time I walk somewhere and I see our stuff. I go in and ask questions. Occasionally I regret it because then I wind up, I'm stuck there for hours helping them. But I don't mind doing it. It's just that, if I'm on vacation, my wife's always like, really? You have to be the guy that's, Bill Nye the Science Guy? I'm like, well, I know, but it's cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that, and that's why I like doing like these types of podcasts and things because, individually I can only speak to so many people, but if I can get on some of these podcasts and do some of the videos that I've done over time, I realize that I can reach more people and get some. And I've had people come up to me. One guy specifically recently came up to me at a show and he goes, oh, I wanted to thank you. And I said, me, Blackmagic? He goes, no, you. And I said, me. I said, have we met? And he said, no, I just watched your videos and you told me information that really helped me. And I said, oh, well, that's great. I said, I'm glad it worked. But it was a little, it knocked me back a little bit to think, oh,
Yeah.
you know, you do all this talking and you think, I guess somebody's watching, somebody must be listening, somebody's doing something. But to actually then influence someone to, you know, to accomplish something, and then they spent the time to come and find me was very cool, humbling. It's the company, you know, we all work for the company, and that's what we do. And I mean, I can't be any happier at this point because we have all the toys, and there's nothing better than being able to play with all these toys.
Yeah.
And that's why, you know, every day somebody's always like, well, what if we were going to do that? And I'm like, well, that's different. Let me see. Well, have you thought about using this and that and this and that, and this is how it will work? And they're like, that'll work. I'm like, yeah, that's the way you want to do it. And so it's fun to be able to work with people to come up with unique ways to do it. Although a lot of times people think they're unique and they're not as unique, but then other times you find something, you go, wow, I've never seen anybody want to do that. So that's cool that you are doing it. Yeah. So
I've had many people, especially back in the day with audio and my avant-garde music, see the way that I hooked stuff up and go, you know, you're technically not supposed to do that, right? Yeah, but listen to what's happening. Oh, I understand that, but you know that, like, you shouldn't be able to do that. Like that shouldn't be able to happen. I don't care. It's happening, and that's cool. So I'm keeping that.
Well, right. Well, I mean, when I was working on my first television station that I worked in Scranton, Pennsylvania, we had an ADO, you know, it was Ampex's digital effects DVD thing. And the Ampex guy came in and we were showing him some of the things that we built. And he's like, it shouldn't be able to do that. I'm like, well, it does. I said, we get to spend all day trying to make it cool, do cool stuff. And, you know, not everybody there gets to do that.
Yeah.
So it is fun every once in a while. You run into people in the field that are like, hey, did you know it could do this? It's like, that's cool. I did not know that. That's great.
Yeah.
So, you know, I laugh now because I think back to those days and I'm like, oh yeah, we used to drop some science on the manufacturer. That's cool. You know, so that's why I try to stay up as much as I can so I can drop science on customers, because at the end of the day, that's what we really should be doing, is showing them how to get more out of what they have.
Yeah.
They'll tell other people today. I mean, there was no internet back then that anybody got up and said, hey, this thing's great. You know, we could yell it, but no one would hear us.
Yeah. I myself was wowed a few years ago. A very, very good friend of mine was head of projection for the Marvel Universe tour. Whenever that was happening, it was like a huge stunt extravaganza, like live show that traveled the country, is now touring the world, stuff like that. And he was in charge of all the video mapping, all that kind of stuff. And he brought me backstage in Houston and was like, come here, man, I want to show you my baby that I built. And I went back and it was literally like 4 6-foot tall racks of nothing but Blackmagic video processing and everything else. He's like, that's you, dude. I told them about that stuff because of you. I was like, oh, that's awesome. I was like, that is cool. What has been the most amazing application that you have seen your products used for, Bob?
It's interesting. We went on a cruise in March, I think it was, and we went into this theater that they had, and they had 6 4K screens on articulating arms. And they had a lot of video playing through it that they would synchronize the movement of the arms to enhance the video that they had. So like images would bop between screens, and then they would make different shapes because they were moving the screens with the articulating arms and all that.
Oh,
and
wow.
I saw one of the technicians coming out of their theater, and I stuck my head in and I said, oh, is that a bunch of Blackmagic? Oh, yeah, that's what we use for the playback. That's what we use for the conversion to go from SDI to HDMI to the screens and all that. He goes, yeah, we have a ton of Blackmagic in there. Well, how do you know them? And I said, I work for them. And he was like, oh, that's really cool. And I said, yeah. I was just curious. I figured that's how you're feeding screens, just, you know, and knowing that to play back the images they were playing back, they needed stuff that could, you know, play back things at such high resolutions.
Yeah.
They were calling it a 12K display, which I guess technically it was when you map it all together. But, in my head, I'm going, I don't think there's any 12K playback devices. But if you group them all together and play them back like that, then you get what you get. But that was probably the most unique thing I've seen on a cruise ship. I thought that's crazy, except that they have new people every day, every week, and so they have to entertain people 365. So they show more content than even a Broadway show. So because they only do a couple shows a day, and these guys do something all the time. And it was fun. We actually watched a rehearsal one day. We were in this lounge, and they were rehearsing the images with some performers to get timing down so that was pretty cool to see that. And even we see more and more of it even in stage, like Broadway. They did that run of Network, which was the movie. They made a Broadway show out of it, and they used a lot of Blackmagic gear on set as well. Like, so in the show,
nice. Yeah, set dressing turned on with content playing. That's awesome. Yeah,
that's cool. And then now I watch television. If you see, I spot our gear in a lot of TV shows when they need to show things, and that's always fun. My daughter, who graduated college last year, and she works in the business now, and she'll screenshot things. Hey, I was watching this show, and I noticed the Blackmagic Ep13 was in the shot, that kind of thing. So it becomes like an Easter egg hunt to find our stuff.
My personal favorite Blackmagic cameo, folks, is actually in hold on, it's coming to me. It is in Avengers Infinity War. Whenever Rocket and Thor are flying to Nidavellir to have the new weapon made, you can see clearly a Blackmagic panel in the background, just the button panel. And it's one of those, like, when you know what one looks like, it's like, hey, look at that. Check out that Blackmagic panel. Nice.
Right. There's a Geico ad that has the DaVinci Resolve Advanced panel in it.
Oh, nice.
And it's the Gecko one where he goes, oh yeah, I don't like that take. And he's standing there.
Oh,
he's next to a guy who's on a DaVinci panel.
Nice.
And they would play it a lot during the football games and stuff. And that's kind of funny to see that. And then Amy Schumer had her Amy Schumer show on Comedy Central. And one time, one of the characters on the show was shooting people with a Blackmagic pocket cinema camera.
Oh, nice.
And which was obvious what they were using. It was very funny. And
it's a very distinctive camera.
So it's fun to see that. Behind the scenes use is one thing, but when you actually see it on camera, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. As an engineer, Bob, it's hard. It can be hard for us not to get stale, not to get salty a little bit, even sometimes with what we're doing, because of our quest for perfection. What is it that kind of keeps you motivated with the industry? What is it that keeps you moving forward, so to speak?
Well, what I find is interesting with Blackmagic that helps the most is that we constantly bring out either new versions of software to add features or new products. On a development cycle that is unmatched. So we constantly have something new that comes out that does something that either people were asking for or people didn't know they needed until we brought it out. And I find that to be very cool. And I also find like some of the homages to the days of old, like in the new Hyperdeck Extreme, we have the Hyperdeck Extreme controller that looks like it was yanked off of a video deck in the 80s or 90s. But it's designed to control not just Hyperdecks via RS-422, but anything via RS-422. In the video that Grant did, he showed it controlling a 1-inch machine, so you could dub off from a 1-inch machine to a Hyperdeck.
Oh, nice.
But the Jog Shuttle, and the Jog Shuttle controls look just like they did on the, a Betacam machine or
on an old VTR.
Absolutely, and all the buttons look the same, and they're in the right place, and it's good to look back at where we are, and some things just didn't need to be reinvented. The wheel is still around for a reason.
Yeah.
And so I think that is cool because we're always getting to show up and talk about something new. Like this user group I did last night. I went to them a year ago. It was about a year ago. Well, we didn't have a 4K Pocket yet. And here I am a year later, and there was a new Pocket 4K to show them, the new 6K, which just came out, and the new Ursa Mini Pro G2, and a new version of Resolve. And that's just in the sort of production and post. And we didn't even get into, the live production side that has a whole other set of products. And as I said earlier, because I grew up, the first job I ever had was shooting industrial videos. Then I got a job at a TV station where I did live news, and I also did made commercials. And then I moved to LA, and I worked at Disney Channel, and I worked at this place called 525, the Post House. We did a lot of music videos and all those things. And then I moved to New York and wound up getting into all these manufacturers. So I got to touch a lot of different areas of this business. And then to work usually you work at a company that kind of specializes in one lane. But Grant's vision is one lane. I want to build a superhighway. So it's like, we're going to do everything. And we do.
Yeah. And it's absolutely phenomenal. The products that y'all put out, the updates that you guys put out, the thoughtfulness that you put into the user interface, the software. It is all one unified game with you guys, and it shows at every turn. So fantastic. The products that y'all put out, the support that y'all have, quite honestly, probably one of the only places that I've ever gone and said like, hey, I've got a problem with this. And somebody on the thread got back to me. Like I've got stuff with other manufacturers, and every once in a while I go and check, and it's like, yeah, my thread is still just sitting there dead for like a year and a half. Nobody answering. You guys are active. You listen. It is really, really great and refreshing to see manufacturers doing that and putting that kind of forethought into their product, into their name, and into the industry.
Well, we feel a certain obligation to our customer base for a few things. One is to try and help with the support because of the volume that's out there, and we realize. The other thing is by using, like we created our own forum, and a lot of that was that we could control the narrative in the sense that you just want to be helpful. We're not here to rant about stupid things. We want to be, but we want to, because if we update a post somewhere and then 100 people read it, well, then that's a great way to reach a lot of people and to get issues addressed and to get notifications of software. Like I always say, if you follow us on Twitter, you'll get basically just announcements of either new product updates, new products, new software updates, and where we're going to be. We don't do, Bob had pizza for lunch. None of that kind of stuff. It's all about information that would be helpful for anybody. So, now I'm hungry for pizza.
I'm not going to see no hashtag, no filter shots of Bob.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Exactly. No, that's not our thing.
Not what you're about.
We have enough. Well, we have enough to put out there. There's so many things, events that we do around the world, but also all these updates and because I hate it when I show up at some place and they didn't know about it. And I get it. Look, everybody's busy and no one just, sits and waits for our updates. But, but it is fun too when you get there and you go, there's an update for that. And that probably fixes it. And I know that actually I'll know that fixes that problem or something like that. Oh, that's great. Oh, that's great. Okay, cool. So, that is, it's fun. But we also know that people say, oh, no, I saw that update. And I'm like, oh, good. So it is working. Yay. I created a homepage that it basically just shows our most recent tweets because, we're based in Australia. So a lot of times they'll have done something overnight. So it appears first thing in the morning. So I'll look at that and I'll go, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure, that they did release that software and that kind of thing. And, keep up on it because you don't want to answer a phone call and have somebody say, no, we just released software. Didn't you read your own news? Like, ooh. So you have to keep up on that. But, that's why I would say blackmagicdesign.com has a lot of information. And if you just go to like the support page, it'll show you all the latest releases so you can keep up to make sure that you're in the most current software. He goes, 90% of or 100% of the time when someone calls into support and they talk about a product, they'll say, well, what version of software are you running? Because if we start there, we might be able to handle a lot of the issues you may be having.
What I'm running what it came with. Why?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I know. At shows, people come up to us and they'll be like, well, mine doesn't do that. And I'm like, well, what version of software are you on? Oh, I've never updated it. I'm like, well, why it doesn't do that?
There you have it.
So, yeah. We've added some free upgrades to product features that most companies would have charged.
I've had my video assist for probably a good 3, almost 4 years now, and I love it. It's great. It fits perfectly on top of my camera, does everything I needed to do, and I will be the first to admit, folks, I updated my software on it probably about a month ago. And it was one of those because I had the Texas Association of Broadcasters coming up, and I was like, man, I've been on the road so much in the last year, I don't remember if I've updated my software on this thing. And yeah, there were all kinds of new features that were on there, like focus assist, all kinds of stuff that were not on there. I was like, oh man, right. I need to do a whole episode on why you just need to keep up with software updates. Because, game-changing stuff comes out to technology that you already have. You may be Bob here is the director of sales operations. Bob, I'm not going to say that you don't need to go out and buy the newest and greatest Blackmagic products. But the update may just take care of what you're trying to do, folks. That's what updates are for. Absolutely. That's why they're there. And these guys take great care. They listen to feedback that we give. If you're having an issue, where can they go to join the groups? Where can they go to join these user groups? Stuff like that, Bob.
Sure. So blackmagicdesign.com is our website, and our forum is on the top. If you look on the top banner, it's all the way on the right. It says forum, and that's a place you can get into the forum, and you can ask questions or read about different topics people have already done. There's a support section tab on there too, and when you go there, you can see all the latest updates for all the camera categories. Obviously, we have a lot of categories now, but yeah, blackmagicdesign.com, real easy, and it's a great resource of information for existing and future customers.
Fantastic, Bob. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us, to share this great information about the awesomeness of Blackmagic with our audience. While you guys are online,
my pleasure.
Thank you. While you guys are online checking that out, please make sure to stop on by the Talking Sound podcast, talkingsoundshow.com. Talkingsoundpodcast.com is the mirror site. That's where you can find great episodes like this, coverage from the Texas Association of Broadcasters. That's where you can find the freelancer database. If you're a freelancer like me, as far as I know, it's the only database in its existence that shows you companies around the country that hire freelancers in the AV world. Until next time, everybody, check us out on the HC Universal Network. Take care of yourselves, take care of your hearing, and keep reaching for 11. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
This is Talking Sound.